Hello, everybody. It's the Gin and Tonic Show. It's another Friday. It's 8 p.m. UK. It's the 3rd of May, 2019. Today, we are going to, well, guess what? We're going to read the Quran. We still have Harris Sultan to appear on the show to tell us about his new book, which is out now. So we're going to do that at some stage because I've been asked about that. We'll do this. It's not forgotten. I'm welcoming Thunderous, who's joining me in the moment because Rob is going to be a bit late because he has to come all the way from London. So he's going to be in here in a couple of minutes. But Thunderous is there to help us. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good time and looking forward to the rest of the show.
There we go. Let me do the normal thing, which I do, and that is give you a position report because I think it's very necessary. I don't even know why it's important, but I think it is important because I see a lot of misconceptions here. We address Islam. So that means we primarily focus on Islam. We don't ignore Bible, Torah, Bhagavad Gita, whatever. We don't ignore them, but we don't focus on them. We address Islam. So we critique, we use facts, reality, and reasoning. Now, we condemn categorically any abuse, oppression, anything like slavery, anything misogynistic, any violence. But at the same time, we embrace free speech. And we embrace criticism, which is factual and constructive criticism. Now, if there's anybody, and we welcome Muslims who come on the show, who tell us, okay, this is their view, this is their perspective, this is their way of looking at things. And if it makes sense, absolutely. We don't like trolls. So we don't like people coming here and then, sending us like little snippets of porno and then snitching on YouTube saying, hey, they use porno, you're going to need to block them. But that's the only message that, Muslim apologists seem to have. Now, we are, I think at least, decent human beings. So we don't criticize Muslims. We criticize the ideology. We go and look what the Quran says in this. We are going so far as to read every single word, every single sentence, every single passage in the Quran. And that is, I think you can't do any better than that. So if you want to get to know Islam, that is the best way of doing it. And then we go and we ask Muslims, okay, what do you think it says here? So we give you our opinion, what we as non-Muslims read when going through the Quran. And then we ask, okay, what do you think about this? And we welcome anyone who wants to comment, question, correct, or if you're simply curious about anything Islam, well, then you've come to the right place. And if you want to join us on the panel and speak to us directly, you're more than welcome to do so. We don't hide. We don't, hand the microphone and block the microphone and things like that. No, anybody here is welcome to say whatever they want, unless it's really preaching and real nonsense. And one other thing I need to say, don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. Don't give us money. Don't support us by trying to give us money or anything like that. That is not the point. You are supporting us by interacting, by giving us a thumbs up, thumbs down. In the case of a thumbs down, I'd love to know why it's a thumbs down, because I'd love to learn from this. But otherwise, it doesn't matter. Any kind of interaction is a positive interaction. Again, normally we go and I find a positive message in the hadith, and this time I couldn't, mainly because I'm not doing too much in Islam during the week, so I couldn't find any positive hadith in the first 4 books that we haven't already used. So, and as far as the crazy comments are concerned, I've only found 2 of them, which I'm going to share with you. So the first one is something that that was said to me by I think it's a Muslim, not Amiri, who says, okay, I'm Bernard Long. Okay, on Facebook, I had to change my name. I was not allowed to stop spamming or anything. So I picked the first name that came to mind. That was Bernard Long. And this person is telling me, of course I do, because the Quran is God's word. Because I asked, okay, do you really believe what it says? And the answer is, of course I do, because the Quran is God's word. And everything in it is the truth. May Allah guide you. You are questioning Allah if you don't believe. Then stop asking us questions. So, I don't know. I don't understand. Thadris, what is your first comment to this? Okay, I thought Thadris was going to say something. Because for me, this whole thing is circular, okay? So if you don't believe, then you're not allowed to ask questions. And then if you don't know what you're talking about, then Muslims come to you and say, well, why don't you ask us questions? But when I'm asking the questions, they're saying, no, you first need to believe, and then you can ask questions. Well, there's no point in asking questions once you believe. So, this is the wrong way around somehow. So,
Yeah, I think
there
just
you
to
are.
yeah, I find it hard to believe that whoever made this comment, Nadim Murhi, what was going through their mind as they were writing it down? What were they thinking? What were they comprehending? What was the emotion attached to the comments when responding like this? That if you don't believe, then stop asking questions. Well, the whole point to believe is to ask questions. It's the asking of questions that leads us to what we will and won't believe, surely. And if we're not asking questions, at what point is it then not just blind faith? So what they're saying is here, what I'm deducing here is, if you don't ask questions, it's blind faith. But if you do ask questions, then you're going to come to a conclusion that Islam is not the truth.
Yeah. Then if you do have something, don't doubt. And most of all, don't question Islam. Just carry on believing. Whatever doubts you have, just wipe them away, but don't ask questions about your doubts because that's bad news.
But we will be covering this at some point in the future with reference to the Quran, where Allah Himself says, "Do not ask." Well, sorry, not Allah via Muhammad rather makes the statements, "Do not ask questions that will cause you trouble."
Yeah. Okay, here's the second one, which I also find great. I made a video where I asked the question, why is your God special? Where I showed how many gods there are and what the common factors are, and there's not much that is different. And somebody said, well, the bad ideas you are talking about are false. True Islam is peaceful. And now, why is it peaceful? I promise you, you will regret making these videos. And not realizing that Liverpool FC 963 LFC, that this is actually quite like a violent threat. I promise you, you will regret making these videos. But Islam is peaceful. Not realizing how stupid this is. What do you think, Thunderous?
Well, at the moment, I'm thinking they're not having a good time at the moment because LFC, they're not progressing well in the Champions League after, with Barcelona at the moment losing 3-0. But with reference to the statements, bad ideas. Where is that? See, this is just one of those vacuous statements. They make the statement that you're bringing up bad ideas, but they never mention what the bad idea is. And my argument or contention has always been when you're using the plural of a statement, not a bad idea, but bad ideas, then that would mean then that there are 3 or 4 or 5 bad ideas that have been presented that you challenge. Well, name 2 then. Name 3. Or if it's a bad idea, name the bad idea. So it's a vacuous statement. It's a throwaway comment that has no substance or foundation to it. If there are bad ideas, if somebody's listening to the show tonight, for instance, and thinking that the conclusions that we're drawing are wrong, then please put it down in the comments. We will respond, and please, appear on the show, and we will respond. We'll listen to what you've got to say. But to make a vacuous statement which is meaningless, bad ideas or false conclusions, it really means nothing at all. And with reference to the statement that true Islam is peaceful, well, that's interesting because you see, everywhere you go around in the world, that statement is being made. However, everywhere you go around in the world, whether it's whatever language, whatever culture, wherever location, whatever denomination, and whatever point of origin, Islam seems to be understanding the same violent attitude everywhere it goes. The manifestation of Islam everywhere is anything but peaceful. So, yet again, one that we can look at in history, a statement that can be made, that can be looked at past history and contemporary history, where Islam is proven to be anything but peaceful.
Okay, then what we will do, we stopped at 223, I believe, which was about the wives. And I'm using a new browser because I'm sick and tired of Firefox always crashing on me. Maxon is crashing on me. And now I'm trying Pale Moon. So what I want to do is screen share that with you, which would be, now I need to find this. I've got so many now. Here we go. Share this one, present to everyone. I think I need to make this a little bit bigger. Is that bigger? Okay, is that big enough?
Yep, that's perfect.
All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm first going to, go through my favorite one, which is the Rashid Khalifa one, which is the most benign and most benevolent version that you can think of. Okay, so we've done 223, which is women are the bearers of your seed, and we've discussed the sentence. Now, what it says. Oh, by the way, welcome everybody who's listening to the live show and who is commenting in the live chat. Thank you very much for being here. Like I said before, don't go to Patreon to support us. Come here to support us. Give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, whichever the case may be. And if it's a thumbs down, let us know what we are doing wrong if you want to correct us. Thanks for being here. If you have questions, I'm going to keep an eye on this. Go ahead and ask. Okay, 224. In the Rashid Khalifa version, it's do not subject God's name to your casual swearing, that you may appear righteous, pious, or to attain credibility among the people. God is hearer, knower. Now, the funny thing is let's go to the Sahih International first. Do not make, and then it says your oath in brackets. So do not make Allah an excuse against being righteous and fearing Allah and making peace among people. And Allah is hearing and knowing. Now, notice two things. One thing is that the sentence itself, the core body, as it were, is nonsensical. And then at the end, you, in 90% of the sentences, have something about Allah patting himself on the back, telling him he's the best, the greatest, the prettiest, and so on and so forth. So Allah, again, is hearing. If he hears, that means he has ears. Again, this anthropomorphizing of a God. And knowing, so he has knowledge. Now, he already has knowledge of everything. So why would anyone, if you look at the sentence, say this? Now, if you look at the corpus, it said, do not make Allah's, or it says name, an excuse in your oath that you do good. So in other words, don't swear, don't use the name, which is, it reminds me of the 10 Commandments. Don't use God's name in vain. This is what it reminds me of. I don't know if this is the same thing, but this is what it implies to me. And that you do good, be righteous. Well, we still don't know what righteous is, and make peace between the people. We don't know what that is either, how to make peace if we've been told so many times now to fight and to make war and to kill and blah, blah, blah. But you're supposed to make peace. I don't know how that works. So you first kill everybody, and when everybody's dead, that you can have peace. There's only one left. Well, that's okay, I suppose. Yusuf Ali takes a different tack, and he says, make not Allah's name an excuse in your oaths against doing good. So I don't know. Thunderous, what do you make of this?
I'm just as confused as you are. I'm reading yet again the surah. It says, "And make not Allah's an excuse in your oaths." I think when we read the other ayahs as well, it might make more sense. But as I'm reading that now, it's yet again what I will refer to as word salad. I'm reading a lot of words, but I'm not making any sense out of them.
Because it says here, make not Allah's name an excuse in your oaths. Okay, this I understand. Don't use God's name in vain. Could be. But then why use this as an excuse against doing doing good? So if you take God to swear to do something good, but then you're doing against doing good. So is it is this meaning that if I want to do something bad, I can say, well, I actually, in the name of Allah, I'm doing this? That
But
is bad?
well, I don't know. But the thing is, you see, this has been taken an oath is to make a declaration like a swear. I swear by this, I swear by that. Allah sets the example in swearing. He swears by this, he swears by that. Allah swears by the things seen, he swears by the things unseen, which pretty much encapsulates all of creation, whether you see it or don't. That means, elephants, tampons, the stars, the moon, oxygen, gravity. He swears by all. So if he's setting the example in taking oaths and swearing by things, I don't understand why it would be a problem for anybody to follow that example if he is the example. Because you see, when you're making an oath or making a declaration, you're swearing by something greater than yourself or something that you value. That's the whole point of an oath. You're either putting your life at stake or the value of the thing that you're putting up as collateral at stake. So Allah here, I mean, if you're swearing by God's name, then you're under compulsion to follow the order that you've carried out. So that can only ever be a good thing, because you'll be swearing by God in order to carry it out. It's almost like if I swear by God, I guarantee to do it. So if you're swearing to do good, that would be a good thing in that recension, that you're going to do good, you're going to fulfill your oath and obligation, not just to give confidence to the person you're making the oath to, but you're giving off confidence, if you believe that you're serving Allah, that you will fulfill your oath in sight of Allah as well, because you've put his name as a collateral, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's a test. Remember, you are put on this planet to worship this God and to pass the test. And now this book is supposed to give you the guidance to enable you to pass the test. And it says, don't take Allah as an excuse against being good, and fear this God and make peace among people.
Okay, that's quite an ambiguous statement, isn't it, peace? Because you can establish peace by forcibly with violence making them adhere or coming into line with your way of thinking, like peace but at the point of through the muzzle of a gun, or in this case at the edge of a sword. That could be one way of establishing peace. So the criteria of setting the example of peace is not being set by Allah in his perfectly clear Quran. It just says by making peace. Is that with love and harmony and unity, or is that through violence? Well, we know when we look on the world scene and as we go through the Quran, it's normally through violence and threats of violence that peace is established.
Let's see what the tafsirs say. Make not Allah a hindrance, a reason by means of which you make your oaths. Okay, this would substantiate what I just said. This was revealed about Abdullah ibn Rawaha, who swore not to show kindness to his sister and her husband and not to speak with them or make up between them. But Allah warned him against doing so, saying, do not make Allah. Okay, you see, now it's starting to make sense, because somebody said, by Allah, do not show kindness to my sister. But this says, no, don't use the name of Allah to prevent someone from showing kindness to another person.
But in the book made clear, why would you need a tafsir?
Exactly.
And the thing is, this is why I don't sometimes like going to the tafsirs and the hadith, because they have found some kind of historical point or reference point and try to amalgamate or graft it on. You don't really know if that tafsir commentary is relevant to this particular part of the Quran.
And I think this is exactly right, that what they did is they saw a sentence, they didn't know what to do with it, so they quickly looked for a reason, and then they came up with this story.
Yes, absolutely, which is why I don't rely on them.
Yeah, and then they say, well, but never mind, you still need to obey the Quran today. But hang on, what am I supposed to obey? I don't understand it. And you telling me the story that this is something that happened 1,000 years ago doesn't help me following the commands in the Quran today.
But how long was it between this ayah being revealed and the tafsir being written or recorded?
It's about 400 years.
So for the first 400 years, bearing in mind, in Muhammad's own words, the best of generations of Islam was during Muhammad's time, then the subsequent generation, then the subsequent generation after that. So how many generations would there be before 400, during that 400-year period, before that tafsir was actually written down and recorded? You would
Before
have
somebody explained it, yeah.
probably about 6 generations. So you have the 6 generations of probably what would be leading up to the purest form of Quran if you work backwards from the moment this was written down as a tafsir. Working backwards, that would not have understood it the way that the tafsir has recorded it.
But then the question, of course, comes in, if you take your comment a little bit further, why didn't God write the way that the tafsirs are writing it?
With greatest respect, I hinted at that when I initially made the comment in a book made perfectly clear. Which
Okay.
I was being sarcastic in saying, well, it's not clear if we're having to have this discussion and go 400 years forward in time to get a tafsir and then almost like rhetorically apply it in the past.
Exactly. So let me skip Ibn Kathir because he always writes a lot. We learn from authentic traditions with a capital T, by the way, that if anyone takes a thoughtless oath to do or not to do a thing and afterwards realizes that fairness demands its abrogation, he should abrogate and expiate. What? The expiation for breaking an oath is the feeding of 10 needy persons. Where does this come from?
It's just invention. He's just made that up because they have to try and quantify and qualify it and make it and almost sanitize it. But you have to feed 10 needy persons. Now that sounds bloody holy and righteous, doesn't it? Sanctimonious and pious. So they have to take something dirty, something that's confusing, and try to, smoothen out the edges and to clean it up to make it more, I suppose, but in the phrase of one guy I listened to once, by God, make it sound religious.
The same is here. What is this? Kusheri or kushairi? Do not make God a hindrance in your oath to be pious and God-fearing and to put things right between people. Surely God is all-knowing. This doesn't say anything. To not make God's name an excuse not to be righteous. What? Saul was asked, okay, so people are talking about totally different things. Some guy makes up a story that this was because of somebody making a mistake. Another guy just waffles. Another guy gives it this esoteric, I don't know, whatever spin. This one is now, what is righteousness? It means that you do not maintain your family ties because of an oath. Oh my goodness. And then Wahidi, this was revealed about Abdullah ibn Ravava, the warning against boycotting the husband of, okay, he's following the same story. Guys, don't you see that this is nonsense? Let's see what the hadith say. The Prophet said to Abu Talha, choose one of your boy servants to serve me expedition to Khaybar. So it took me letting me ride behind her. I was near the age of puberty. So others were selective that took her wrong where her menses was over, took her for his wife. Harris, a kind of dish was served and smelled. Others told me to call those. So it was a marriage banquet. Then left for Medina. I saw holding a cloak around his head to make a white purpose of fear, 2 mountains. Now, excuse me, what does this hadith have to do with this? Okay, I don't know. Okay, so I think what we can do is we can agree that there is not a lot here that makes sense. We can agree that there is not a lot here that we can take from this. So, well, let me go back to Rashid Khalifa. Do not subject God's name to your casual swearing that you may appear righteous, pious, or to attain credibility among the people. Now, that sentence makes sense. This sentence, you can get some content from. You can get a behavior. You can get a moral action from this. And this is why I think this is very popular with people, because this is exactly what it does. It takes nonsense that we find in the Quran and makes it into something that they can actually follow. That's why I like this Rashid Khalifa thing, even though it's a total lie. I mean, we can see from the corpus that none of what Khalifa is saying is actually there. He's just making stuff up. Okay, should we go to the next one?
Absolutely.
Okay, 225. Let me start with Sahih International. Allah does not impose blame upon you for what is unintentional in your oaths, but He imposes blame upon you for what your hearts have earned. And Allah is forgiving and forbearing. Again, the format is you have the frame, which is Allah is forgiving and forbearing, and then you have the actual contents, does not impose blame upon you for what is unintentional. So if you swear, I swear I'm going to go shopping now, and then you don't, then you are not, you cannot be blamed.
Yeah, it's almost trying to, if you like, when your heart and mouth are sort of like in opposition to each other. Which is interesting because He will not call you to account for thoughtlessness in your oaths. So you could pretty much say what you like, almost. He's not going to bring that into account, but the intentions of your heart, that's what He's going to bring into account. That doesn't make sense, because surely whatever comes out your mouth should come from your heart in the first place.
Well, it comes from my lungs and things like that. But
we know metaphorical speaking.
yeah, but the thing is, what your hearts have earned. I mean, I can sell my kidneys and I get money for this, but you can't sell your heart.
But I can understand why language like that is being used, because we use language like that today. For instance, a broken heart. She died. She's broken hearted. The heart hasn't broken. It's just symbolic of the emotional situation the person's in.
Okay, granted. Yeah.
Or like that person's heart sank. Well, where did it sink? What, it sunk into the bowels of we know, their heart was elated. The heart jumped for joy. We know that the heart is symbolic in any language and culture as being the seat of emotions and the state of a human being well-being, with reference to the heart. So I understand it when it's written poetically in this manner. Because the heart is sometimes referred to as the innermost person that we are. So if we can say, how many times have you and I and other people in the world, maybe listening to the show, have said something with our mouth, but really the person that we're inside isn't in agreement with what we've just said. We can contradict what comes out of my mouth. Lying is one of those things. Making grandiose claims will be another, exaggerated claims, or saying you want to do something when in reality, inside yourself, you actually don't want to do it. So I can understand that. But when it says there, Allah will not call to you account for thoughtlessness in your oaths, but for the intentions of your heart. Yeah, I can almost understand if there is a God, in this recension, what he's saying there is basically saying, your heart, or you shouldn't contradict what comes out your mouth, and what comes out your mouth shouldn't contradict your heart.
Okay, but Doorknob Head is making a good point. And that is, it's metaphorical now. But was it metaphorical then? Or did they just not know how hearts worked? And this is the point. No, they did not. Because we all know today that the Greek medicine that they were following, that they were copying into the Quran, that this was wrong. So we know that today. And yet we see this left, right, and center. We see that Muhammad was, taken while he was sleeping, and the angels came, they opened his chest, and they took and washed his heart and then filled it with wisdom. So this is exactly in line with what the people in those days believed. And a lot of the Greeks were saying the heart is where the soul is. This is where your emotions come from. This is everything down here in the stomach, because you have a stomach feeling. My stomach says this and things like that. So the heart, the brain was actually seen as a cooling matter, because they opened people and they saw that the brain is there, but they didn't know what it does. So they took everything, that has to do with thought and everything to come from the heart, and the brain was just, for the head.
I don't think that was pretty much a standard all over the world. I think there are a lot of poetically spoken poems and songs and stories written of the past that pretty much are in very much the same way that songs and poems are written today, with reference to the seat of human emotion, the heart. So though I'm in agreement with you that there was a period of time where people just thought of parts of the human body were doing things that they clearly didn't do. At the same time, there is evidence to show that the parts of the human body were spoken of in a poetic way. When people refer to, he's the apple of my eye. Well, no, he's not an apple. Subjectively or objectively, that person's not an apple, so he's not an apple of your eye. But it's meant, in a poetic way, and we know what it means.
Yeah. Now, we suddenly do, like, I don't know how to explain this. We're talking about Allah and the oaths and the swearing that God does and the swearing that people do. And then from 225 to 226, what happens? For those who swear not to have sexual relations with their wives is a waiting time of 4 months. But if they return, then indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful. I don't understand this. Those who intend to divorce their wives will wait 4 months, cooling off period. If they change their minds and reconcile, then God is forgiver or merciful.
I think verse 27 actually sort of brings a little bit more clarity. I think it may have been one verse that was split into two. I don't know, but
yeah, this is a section. There's a couple of sentences all on the same topic now. So
yeah. The Youth reads, for those who take an oath from abstination from their wives, a waiting of 4 months is ordained. If then they return, Allah is oft forgiving, most merciful. See, that makes no sense. But when you read verse 227, it does kind of bring some clarity on it. Shall I read 227?
No, I just want to say hi to our village idiot, Mujahid. Mujahid what? I mean, he's always telling me that I'm anonymous, hiding behind names, and now he's doing the same thing. Mujahid is not a name. Okay, so if I call myself Stop Spying, he calls himself Mujahid. This is Kenny Boma. Non-Muslims are attempting to explain the Quran while there are no Muslims on the show. Does it say that anybody reading the Quran must have a Muslim next to them? No.
When the Quran was being revealed, were they? They were not Muslims that the Quran was being revealed to at this moment in time. They were just listening to Muhammad. So they were not Muslims.
And every verse of the Quran is easy to explain for those who have done actual study of the tafsir. Well, what does ALM mean? It doesn't. Nobody knows what it means. So don't talk nonsense. I like how, this is a typical example of a Muslim who doesn't understand Islam, who has no knowledge of the Quran, but still opens his mouth and says, well, it's very easy, blah, 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 making, like general statements which are totally untrue.
Which is why he mentions the tafsir. Well, tafsirs will explain. Yeah, but the tafsirs explain 400 years later, Kenny. They weren't around for the first 400 years, and Muhammad referred to the first few generations as being the clearest and purest of Muslims. His generation and subsequent 2 or 3 generations after. So your point is lost by your own prophet himself.
Yeah, and this is the point. If you need a tafsir to explain the Quran, there's something wrong with the Quran. And if we read the Quran and we don't know what the hell it is talking about, then there's something wrong with the Quran, not with me. Because God should know that we have a problem understanding it and therefore should change it.
And I just want to commend Simon James, who's been commenting in the side panel. He mentioned a point earlier on. I thought it was quite clever because he says the hadith are people asking questions with reference to the point you brought out earlier on in the show about don't ask questions. That's a very good point, Simon. That you're right. The hadith is basically the followers and companions of Muhammad asking questions. Spot on.
And if you take a look at this, those who forswear their wives, those who abstain from having sex with their wives because of an oath they have made, should not touch them for a period of 4 months. Now, if I swear to my wife that I will get her a car, why should I not touch them for a period of 4 months? Because those who forswear their wives is only in brackets. So this doesn't exist. I don't understand. Just because I'm not having sex, they should not touch them for a period of 4 months. Those who abstain from having sex should not touch them for a period of 4 months. So if I don't have sex with my wife, I should not have sex for 4 months. They should wait 4 months. Excuse me? They should not touch them for a period of 4 months. They should wait 4 months. Yeah, well, why are you repeating that? And then if they have sex with them before the 4 months are over, Allah is forgiving. Okay, so what's the point of that they have not honored the oath provided they repent, and that he made amends due to them clear? You know, this is exactly the point. It doesn't make sense. It does not make sense. What do you mean forswear their women? Huh.
But I don't understand. The use of oath says, for those who take an oath from abstention from their wives. Why would you take an oath of abstention from your wives? What would be the point? Where is the gain in that?
Well, I
And
think this is in the case of divorce, isn't it?
well, it should start off by that.
Yeah. Yes.
But it's not saying that. You don't get that. If it is, this is where I was saying, maybe the context comes in 227, but that's assuming that the context is 227. We not making it clear. This is a book made clear, easy to understand. If as being brought up as a Muslim myself, I was under the impression if you say talaq, 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 when you said it the third time, that's when your divorce is. There is no waiting period of 4 months ever mentioned, not that I've ever come across with reference to divorce, if that's the context of this surah.
Yeah, but hang on. The Jalalain say, no. Those who forswear the women by swearing they will not have sexual intercourse with them, then you have to wait 4 months. But if they can't handle themselves and do have sex with them, then it doesn't matter. God is forgiving.
But the thing is, though, if you're contemplating a divorce, surely you'd be living in separate locations. You wouldn't still be living under the same roof, cooking and eating and going out shopping and doing all the other things together. The whole point is divorce. If you're preparing for a divorce, is separation.
Yeah,
People.
and then just because you're having sex again, it's not that what you're doing is you're saying, okay, you've actually the emotional side says no, you forgive your wife and or the wife forgives you, or whatever the case may be for the divorce, for thinking that there should be a divorce. If you then go back to whatever it was, then God is forgiving. So what's the point? What is the point?
Yeah, I don't quite understand that. Why? There's nothing, no substance. I mean, for instance, why would God allow a divorce? Surely there should be criteria in God's eyes as to why a divorce should be taking place. I mean, if you look at it from in the Quranic recension of what marriage would be something that Allah ordained that should take place between a man and a woman. So it's a God ordained arrangement as far as Islam is concerned in their own recension. So why would he then sanctify a divorce, which is the separation of an arrangement that he's put in place?
Okay, let's hear another opinion. For those who forswear the women, a wait of 4 months. Okay, that sentence doesn't make sense as such. If they revert, God is forgiving. So it doesn't really matter. Why do you put there 4 months? If you take 4 months, then you take 4 months. And if not, well, you don't. It doesn't really matter. Though the right of companionship with one's mate is upheld for you unless you relinquish it. You are nonetheless held to his rule, for the right of the real has even more right, haku al-haki ahaku, to be observed. You see, Thunderous, now you know exactly what it means because you have the explanation.
Yes.
Rob came just in time to comment this. And then it says, after the haku al-haki ahaku, to be, if they revert, that is, they turn back to revive what they have let die and rectify what they have squandered, God is forgiving. Now, this makes sense. This is exactly what I said earlier. If God had made the sentence like the way that Kushairi says, then it makes sense. But okay, no, because the wife has a lesser voice because she is captive in the hands of her spouse. No, that's not good. That's not good. That's not good at all. The wife has a lesser voice because she is the captive in the hands of her spouse. God takes charge of the affair and preserves her right and commands the husband to return to her or release her. Okay, this doesn't. Okay, welcome, Rob.
Good evening. How are you guys?
We're looking at this sentence here, and this is highly confusing.
Is there anything new in that regard?
Well, we have an imam telling us that all these sentences are very easy to understand. And it says here that if you want to divorce your wife, you can do so. But if you don't, then it's also okay. Now, why can't you say it like that instead of those who swear not to have sexual? It's all about sex. Why is it all about sex? I think a relationship is about emotions, is about harmony, is about communication, is about how you address each other, how you handle each other, not only about sex.
Presumably you've covered this already, but what's the point of abstaining? Is this over Hajj, or is this over Ramadan, or
Divorce.
is there a particular reason? Oh, a
Well,
divorce. Okay.
didn't you? Come on, Rob, you must have seen this immediately. It's about divorce.
Presumably there's other verses that point to that, or is that just the
This is the beginning.
Okay, so there's nothing that points to divorce in the previous.
That's the first one
ayat.
of the whole set. If you carry on, it does, but here it doesn't. So you have to wait 400 years for the tafsirs for them to explain what this sentence actually means. So there you go.
Yeah.
No, Kenny, you're not going to get an invite here.
No, I was going to say the same.
15 million opportunities to explain things, and you've made a fuck up every single time. So that's it. We're not going to listen to your bullshit. Okay, so that's it. So let me go to the next one and see if the next one makes any more sense. If they decide on divorce, then indeed Allah is hearing and knowing. If they decide on divorce, yeah, but they've already done this. They've already decided. I don't know, this is the wrong way around. This one should be, if a couple decides to divorce, then Allah is hearing and knowing, and He allows this. And then if I go back to the previous one, then it makes sense. And for those who swear, then if you have decided on a divorce, then don't have sex anymore. And that's cool.
Are either of you two parents?
Yes.
Okay, I'm asking a personal question there, and you have the right to refuse, obviously, but sons or daughters?
I won't say that.
Okay, let's assume you have a daughter, or pretend you have a daughter, and she's in her 20s and she's got married, right? And then she lives with her husband.
What do you mean 20s? She's 9.
Okay, sorry.
Not the special case.
He's not a Muslim yet. He's not a Muslim yet, and he sounds like he's too young anyway, for a 9-year-old wife anyway. But let's assume then she's been married for about 10 years, and her husband decides that he doesn't want to be with your daughter anymore as a husband. No particular reason, he just doesn't want to. How would you, as a parent, find that that your daughter is now just no longer wanted, as casual as a person may decide that they don't want their pet dog anymore?
Well, I mean, if it was that casual, obviously I would be concerned with that, right? I'd want to ask him or her what was going on, right? Because obviously I used to do counsel, relationship coaching and training. So obviously I've got some expertise in this field, but I'd want to ask them what the case is, right? And if it's like you say, he just said, well, I got tired of her. Yeah, that would be something that would be, to put it mildly, a cause for concern, right?
Would you not try best to try and reconcile and particularly if children are involved, and also set an example in the local community, try and encourage the couple to make the relationship work by any means necessary?
Well, I wouldn't do that, no.
I don't mean blackmail or coerce. I mean reaching and appealing in an emotive and logical way.
No, I wouldn't necessarily do that, because in my experience, sometimes it is better for couples to split up, right? What you don't want necessarily is where you have a husband and wife that really, it's irreconcilable, and they stay together for the children, because they will have a low-level relationship. The children will notice this, and that's what they take into the world. So there's certain circumstances where, as a relationship person, I would actually say, hey, do you know what? It seems like this is irreconcilable, and it may well be that the best is you split up. But there would be a lot of work, leading up to that point anyway. So it wouldn't necessarily be, for me anyway, a case that they should always stay together, because I think that can actually have irreparable harm on kids as well.
Okay, I accept the good point you're making there. Absolutely, I totally agree with you. If in that sense, if two people just have no love between each other, I understand. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I totally understand why divorce might be the better option. Now, you're a man, a human being, coming up with statements like that, and yet Allah just seems to hand out a divorce willy-nilly. There seems to be no appeal or reasoning or criteria as far as divorce is concerned, and considering the institution of marriage, as far in the Islamic recension, is something that He Himself has set up. So this is an Allah arranged arrangement between man and a woman. about staying together and having children. Yet it just seems here that if a man and notice this is all in the main male context. This is the man deciding he doesn't want his wife anymore, and there's no criteria.
Yeah, he can just decide, right? Presumably there's something there. But just on a quick note, because I'm sure Stops has seen it as well, as Kenny Burma is complaining that he won't be on the panel. If you want to come on Discord on the after show, we'll send a link. I'm sure TDS Dave can post you the link. You can come on there, but have you on the show here with your long drawn out monologues? No, we're not having that. We've had you on before, Kenny, and we don't feel like you're a person of knowledge. And I don't think you add value to the show. But if you want to come on Discord, we can have a full go on Discord, no problem. That'll be on the after show.
And I've just exposed him. I just showed that he doesn't know the Quran. And they prefer less knowledgeable Muslims. There is no such thing as a less knowledgeable Muslim.
Panel is spelled P-A-N-E-L, not P-A-N.
We actually want knowledgeable Muslims.
And
that doesn't include you, Kenny. And we're speaking from experience, right? It's not as if we haven't had you on the panel multiple times. So I personally, I won't speak for my colleagues. I don't consider you a knowledgeable Muslim in Islam, right? So you make stuff up. Your reasoning is poor. I'm looking for a knowledgeable Muslim, and unfortunately, you're not it. But you're welcome to come on the Discord server for the after show.
And it's exactly as Thunderous just points out. It's capital P panel. They will not let me go on the panel. This is exactly what happens. You know, even this shows what a low level of intellect you have, that you can't even spell panel.
Kenny, can I just you said that they prefer less knowledgeable Muslims. You'll notice that Benny doesn't appear on the show anymore because of his lack of knowledge. With the greatest respect to Benny, who's probably listening to the show, we've asked him for not to appear on the show because of his lack of knowledge. That's why he's not there. We want knowledgeable people, not unlearned Muslims.
No, this is not an insult. It's not explanations, it's explanations, and it's not an insult. It's a fact, unfortunately. I don't care whether you can only type in capitals. Oh, goodness, what a waste of time. Okay, so we go through with the divorce, then God is hero Noah. Oh, and by the way, while we're here, just so that everybody knows, Kenny Boma has put out a video where he says, if you buy a book by a lady, I don't know what her name is, then he will send you his book for free. Now, his book is $20 or $19.99 or something like that. It's way too expensive. And if you buy the lady's book for $7, then you get his book for $20 for free. So that's a good deal. And he will send it to you free of charge. And that is what he has promised. So I took him up on that and I said, okay, well, how about number one, giving me a PDF so I can critique your book? Because that is what a lot of people do. No, he doesn't do that. If I want to critique his book, I need to buy it. I said, okay, cool. Then what about your promise that you will send me the book if I buy the book from this lady? Yeah, okay, that's a possibility. So I go and buy the book by the lady. And then what happens? He says, no, I can't send you the book. I can only send you a hard copy. I said, give me the PDF. Then I have it and I can go through it. I can quote it. I can, copy paste quotes, and I can do this properly. No. He doesn't want to do that because he wants my address.
Is he crazy? No ways you're going to give your address.
So I said to him, that's not happening, because I know that you don't like me, you hate me, and you will do anything to damage me. So, if I give you my address, I'm going to have the hit squad standing here in front of my door. And then he says, no, this is going to, I've shown you that I will not. And I said, okay, then let's do one thing. Promise me that you will not divulge my personal information to anybody ever. And that's it. No, I can't do that. I said, yeah, okay, exactly. This shows what you are really made of. Yeah, but I've shown that I'm such an honest guy. I said, no, you've only been lying to us. There's nothing that you have said that is true ever. You only lie. You're a compulsive. I don't know. It seems to be his only thing that he can lie. Anyway, to make a long story short, then he says, okay, I promise I will not send my address. Now, send my address. Okay, so he's not going to send my address. This is not what I asked. He is so low in his comprehension skills, it's amazing. Because I said to him, you will not divulge my information. In other words, you will not give my information to anybody ever. and he says, I will not send your address. That's not the same thing, because you can write it down and show it to somebody and then tell me, well, I didn't send it to anybody. You know, there's a lot of things that he doesn't understand, he doesn't comprehend. Very difficult for him to make any sense of what somebody tells him. And he says to me, well, why don't you just do it? I said, well, I can't do it unless you've told me what to do. Well, like I said in my video, I said, in the video, you didn't say anything. You didn't outline the process or the procedures or the steps or anything. You just said, I'll send the book. Yeah, but you didn't tell me what I need to do. And he doesn't understand these things. So anyway, I wonder, I've sent him an address, and now I wonder if...
Yes, he's just said he sent you his address. You don't have to say it again with quotation marks. Well, send me the PDF, Kenny. If you think your book is so good that it'll withstand our critique, then send us the book. If I ever write a book, or Stops does, we'll send you a copy, right? And you can critique it, right? Do you not want a critique? Maybe we're not the strongest critique, but at least we'll do somewhat of a job, right?
Okay, I've sent you an address. Have you posted the book? That's the question. Not you sent me an address.
Let's not get too sidetracked on Kenny. Shall we? Let's move on.
Actually, you're right. I just want to make this public here and now. So, because this is recorded, so this is a public record that this is the situation. So, if I have the hit squad standing here, we know exactly whom to blame. Okay, so we're on 227. If they resolve the divorce, that indeed is all we're, so they can resolve the divorce. So everything is the wrong way around. So if we go to 228 now, and now it gets interesting. Because now it says, divorced women remaining in waiting for 3 periods, it is not lawful for them to conceal what Allah has created in their wombs, if they believe in Allah in the last day. And their husbands have more right to take them back if they want reconciliation. And due to the wives, it is similar to what is expected of them, according to what is reasonable. But the men have a degree over them, and Allah is exalted in might and wise.
There we go. Inequality exposed again, right?
Yeah. Now, this is one of the key sentences in the entire Quran. Let's see what Mr. Rashid makes of this. The divorced women shall wait 3 menstruations. It is not lawful for them to conceal what God creates in their wombs if they believe in God in the last day. The husband's wishes shall supersede the wife's wishes. And now he adds, if he wants to remarry her, because he realizes the huge implications that the Quran makes here. So he adds here, if he wants to remarry her, which is something the Quran does not say. And then he adds, the women have rights as well as obligations equitably, which is not what the Quran says. Thus, the man's wishes prevail in case of pregnancy. So this is Rashid Khalifa making a very dishonest interpretation of what the Quran says, because Yusuf Ali also says, divorced women shall wait concerning themselves for 3 monthly periods, nor is it lawful for them to hide what Allah has created in their wombs. So if they're pregnant, they need to divulge this, if they have faith in Allah. And their husbands have the better right to take them back in that period if they wish for reconciliation. And women shall have rights similar to the rights against them according to what is equitable, but, and this is what Rashid Khalifa left out, men have a degree over them, full stop.
Yeah.
It doesn't say anything here, what Khalifa adds, that this is in case of pregnancy or if he wants to remarry her. No.
But there's also another issue that just popped up there to me as well. The Quran seems to make a mistake there, that Allah has created in their wombs. Surely it's the husband that's created that, because if they have free will, then the husband would have created what's in their womb, not Allah. Unless they're robots, or unless Allah's planned it and it's all predetermined and they don't have a free will. So how does that work?
Well, this is the belief, because remember, they believe that every living thing is made of water and of mud and dust and all sorts of things. And this is then somehow placed on top of the sperm as a homunculus. And this is then deposited in the womb, copying, following the Greek medicine idea, that then what is deposited inside the woman only gives the nourishment for what the man, the seed, has deposited inside the woman. This is the whole idea, the whole concept. And then it makes sense.
Yeah, but he hasn't. But Allah hasn't created this, right?
No, Allah has. Because remember, if you go to 23:14, or if you go to any one of these sentences, it always says that Allah has created the human being from dust, and he put
but that
this
was only
into
the
the
first
seed.
human being, right?
I think also, if you bear in mind as well, there was the coitus interruptus where Muhammad says it will make no difference if you practice coitus interruptus or not, because wherever Allah's predetermined as pregnancy is going to happen anyway.
Yeah. But the Quran explains this. The Quran explains that every single human being is created from, well, I don't know, mud or dust. There's different things. And then this is deposited inside the woman. So God is personally responsible for handcrafting every single human being.
Okay, well, I mean, so how is the crafting? So you said that it happens with this dust. I mean, we know now, of course, how this works. When a man inseminates a woman, what part of this is Allah involved in?
The beginning. Well, he supervises everything, and then he sends angels to determine the gender and the fate and everything after 42 days. But in the beginning, it is God who creates a human being from out of mud or dust or clay or different materials. And then this is placed inside the sperm. Well, inside the semen, because they didn't know about sperm in those days. So this is inside the liquid somehow. So you get this nutfa, this liquid to go inside the woman, and part of that liquid is already this homunculus, which is then deposited. It hangs on to the blood clot, and it nourishes from that blood, and then goes and lodges inside the womb.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously anti-scientific, right? So
Absolutely.
Is everybody being born a miracle? Is Allah creating a miracle with every birth?
Yeah.
You know, defying the laws of physics and our understanding of the natural order of things. Okay.
And Ibn Abbas says, through one or two pronouncements of divorce, shall wait a certain time, called the waiting period, for 3 menstruation periods. So it's all about sex. It's all about who owns the children. That's all that it's about, okay? So it is not lawful that they should conceal their pregnancy. So if a woman is pregnant and she gets divorced, she can't go and marry another guy and then say it's his. No, she has to wait 3 months to make sure that if she is pregnant, then it becomes obvious. And she has to declare, yes, I'm pregnant from my old husband. So therefore, I need to wait now before I can go and get money from the next guy. So, which Allah hath created in their wombs of offspring, if they are believers, and their husbands would do better to take them back as their wives during the waiting period, or if they are pregnant. I don't know, this is all convoluted. This is because the early period of Islam, when a man divorced his wife via one of the 2 pronouncements of divorce, he had a better right to take her back after the lapse of the waiting period, before her marrying again. And then later, the right to take one's wife back was abrogated by the saying of Allah, divorce must be pronounced twice. Similarly, a man had a better right to take his wife back if she were pregnant, even if he had pronounced her divorce 1,000 times. This was, however, abrogated again by Allah saying divorce them for the legal period in 65:1. And they, women, have rights and inviolability with their husbands similar to those of their husbands over them, and kindness and kindness. So this goes now to inheritance, blood money, and things like that.
Yeah, and Kenny's claiming, no. What was his response here? It means a degree of responsibility of your wives in caring for them.
Oh, yes, of course.
That's his interpretation.
But this is something I already said. This was the excuse. But it's just an excuse. It doesn't say so in the Quran. This is a personal interpretation. This is a personal opinion, which would be nice. But it's not in the Quran. This is the big problem. The Quran very clearly says that men are a degree over their women. So there you go. But pressure on the women to do a better right does not denote any process against no other person the right to marry them during the. Their men have a degree above them in rights, as in their duty. And Jalalain agrees, okay? Or the Jalalain, the other brothers. Men, okay, listen again. Men have a degree above the women in rights, as in their duty, in other words, the women's duty to obey their husbands because of their payment of a dowry. In other words, the husband has paid the money, and now the wife had better obey. And the husband being the breadwinner. And God is mighty, his kingdom wise as a day for you. And that is then where later on we're going to hit, if the woman does not do this, and if the husband even expects that she's not doing, or even suspects that she's not doing it, he's allowed to hit her after some 2 other steps. And that is
which is strange, considering Khadija, the woman who's the original prophet and creator of Islam, was the breadwinner for Muhammad.
Yeah, exactly. Other way around, eh?
Yeah. As soon as she died, look how the tables turned on women. These verses speak of it all, that Muhammad had a clear contempt and hatred for women in Arabian society. And that vitriol is oozing in what we're reading.
Now, Maududi, okay, remember, this is now jurisprudence. This goes into the fiqh. And this is the interesting part, because now we're seeing that there's no unity. There's no correspondence here. People disagree left, right, and center, because he says, on the contrary, the other section says that the husband forfeits the right of reunion as soon as the wife has a discharge of the 3rd monthly course. Okay, so after that, he's not even allowed to reunite with her. And this opinion is held by Hadrat. So this is not even a sheikh. Hadrat is a learned person, which is Aisha, and the learned people, Ibn Umar and Zayd bin Thabit. Now, Zayd bin Thabit is the guy who actually collected the different Quran verses and things like that. And then you have the Shafi and the Maliki jurists have adopted the same. So it means that there are 2 others who disagree. Okay, so if you're looking at Hanbali, for example, you will see that they disagree that the husband cannot ask for a reunification after 3 months. This is not possible. So it's only the Shafis and the Maliki who agree with this. So there is no common opinion here. There is no consensus. There is nothing here that everybody agrees on. So it must, however, be clearly understood that the husband retains the right of reunion only in the case when he has pronounced 1 divorce or 2 divorces, but he forfeits the right of reunion when he has pronounced 3 divorces, whatever that may mean.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that people say, yeah, it's very clear what the Quran says, and then you see Maududi, one of the greatest scholars of Islam, saying, no, we have different opinions here, because you have Abu Bakr, Umam, Ali ibn Abbas, Abu Mushad, there's some other companions. They say something completely different than Aisha, Umar, Zabit, Atabit, and all the Shafi and Malikis. So if somebody says one thing, the other one says something, that means there is no consensus. There is no clear way of reading the Quran, because everybody has a different interpretation.
Yeah.
What Muslim apologists are telling us, that the Quran is clear, easy to understand, and there is no doubt in it. But it's bullshit, because we see it right here, how many different opinions you have and how many different versions you have, because suddenly this is uncomfortable. Because they don't like this, that it says the men have a degree over them.
Which was fine in those days, right?
In
the sense that that's what they were all doing in those days, right?
Exactly. That is the point.
I don't think we've had a single show out of the 18 or however many we've done reading the Quran, right, where we haven't said this, right? Where the Quran claim about being easy to understand and straightforward is just complete nonsense, right? And you've got to go do all the study. Then suddenly it makes sense. But here, like you say, you've got one of the most respected scholars, ancient scholars, who himself says the jurists differ on this, right? And nobody's going to claim that they're a better scholar than him.
Are you better than Maududi? Exactly.
Yeah. So we say it every single show, right? I suppose it keeps being repeating. Right? There's no way that God could have authored this if his intention was to make a clear, concise book for most people to understand.
So if there's anything that we need to take away from today's show, is men have a degree over their wives.
That's 228, is it?
228.
Yeah.
228.
Yeah, so that's a good one to bring up. So if a Muslim claims that they have a progressive view, or that Islam is the way to go, 228 is something that you can bring towards them, and then get them to sort of make something up on the spot, right?
Okay. Can I just add on that as well? In the discussion that we're having tonight, one has to bear in mind, in Islamic parlance, 123,999 prophets have preceded Muhammad, gone to all nations, allegedly, with a message of Islam. And yet we find nothing like this, nothing in any holy book, whatever holy book you choose to follow, written like this. And there's no details, no criteria, no dialogue, no word salad anywhere in history that sounds anything like like a message that's already been previously released.
Yeah, no evidence, basically, right?
Yes, that it comes from the same source, or that the same source has sent out a message anywhere like this. Because when you look at other religions and their treatment of women, you don't really find it the same way that we find it written here. That's the point I wanted to make. That there's a certain historical consistency that Islam claims has a historic tie for all the way down to Abraham and then up to Noah, and then from Noah to Adam. But we find nothing from Noah, from Adam to Noah to Abraham, and Abraham to Muhammad, of any text written in anything like this. That's it.
Quite right. No evidence of this, I think, is evidence against the claim. So there we go.
Yeah.
Let's go to 229. Let me read the Khalifa again first. Divorce may be retracted twice. The divorced woman shall be allowed to live in the same home amicably or leave it amicably. It is not lawful for the husband to take back anything he's given her. However, the couple may fear that they may transgress God's law. If there is fear that they may transgress God's law, they commit no error if the wife willingly gives back whatever she chooses. These are God's laws. Do not transgress them. Those who transgress God's laws are the unjust. Clear?
Let's try again here. Try with Sahih International there.
Okay, let's try Sahih International. Now, divorce is twice. Now, I don't know what that is. We'll have to go to the tafsir to understand what divorce is twice. Because talaq, you have to say 3 times this is one divorce, okay?
Yusuf Ali says it, right? A divorce is only permissible twice there. So that's
yes. Yeah, but it's only permissible twice. It doesn't really, I don't understand that. So you divorce, then you say, well, actually, we've managed to sort out the difference. Let's remarry. So let's remarry. So let's carry on. Okay, everything's hunky-dory. We can have sex. And now he says, no, actually, no, this is not going to work. So you need to divorce again. And then, then either keep her in an acceptable manner. So, divorce is twice. So you've divorced her twice. And then if you've divorced her, either keep her in an acceptable manner or release her with good treatment.
Yeah, the release her part is a bit problematic, right? So you probably don't want to, if you're a Muslim apologist, you probably don't want to use the Sahih International version. Yusuf Ali sounds more palatable, right?
Yeah. And it's not lawful for you to take anything of what you've given them unless both fear that they will not be able to keep within the limits of Allah. Okay, we'll have to speak about it. But if you fear that you will not, then there is no blame upon either of them concerning that by which she ransoms herself. These are the limits of Allah, so don't transgress them. And whoever transgresses those who are the wrongdoers.
Just read the Yusuf Ali as well there.
Oh. A divorce is only permissible twice. After that, the parties should either hold together with a capital T on equitable terms or separate with kindness. It is not lawful for you to take back any of your gifts except when both parties fear that they would be unable to keep the limits ordained by Allah. If you do indeed fear that they would be unable to keep the limits ordained by Allah, there is no blame on either of them if she gives something for her freedom. Those are the limits ordained by Allah, so don't transgress them. And if you do transgress the limits, such persons are wrong.
Well, that sounds very different to Sahih International.
Yeah. So what does it mean? Any offers?
Yeah, I mean, Yusuf Ali seems to point to you can only choose to get divorced twice, right? You can't do it a third time.
That's what I'm getting from it. That you can marry a woman, divorce her, marry a woman and divorce her. You can't marry her a third time. You can only divorce her twice.
Yeah, but then what do you do with her? She's living in your house. How can you keep her in your house?
Well, you can release her with good treatment, right? Or
yeah, but you don't have to. You hold together on equitable terms. What does that mean?
Well, that
prenuptial.
means if they decide to live together, they could somehow live together. If you had a big enough house, she could be in a room, and you could carry on, with other wives, right?
But you got divorced for a reason.
Yeah. Obviously, they don't want to live together, or they don't want to be in each other's room, or whatever the case is.
Exactly.
Maybe it could be that you have a big house, and rather than throwing her out on the street, she can be in one of the side rooms off to the one side, right?
And if you're not,
But the thing is, this was in Arabia in the 6th century. They didn't have big houses and roads on the side, and that. They lived in shacks and huts.
And tents, maybe.
tents,
So maybe, you give her a separate tent, right?
exactly. Draw a picture, break out the crowds, because I don't understand it. It is not lawful for you to take back any of your gifts. Okay? Except, so it is lawful to take back some gifts when both parties fear that they would be unable to keep the limits ordained by Allah. Now, please, somebody explain that one.
What are those limits?
I have no idea what this is about.
And what gifts would it be that could possibly, have you exceed these limits?
So if I give her a watch for her birthday, and it's a Rolex or something, whatever, and then we get divorced, then we get back together, and then we divorce again, and now she's living with me, and let's say I have one tent, maybe I have a hijab, a veil, a separation, and she's living on the other side, and I'm living on this side, okay, sleeping. And then she says to me, listen, we can't do what God wanted us to do, so here's the watch back.
But have a look at the tafsir, see if they sort of come up with something.
Oh, Jesus. Okay, Ibn Abbas. He says divorce in which a man is entitled to take back his wife pronounced once on 2 separate occasions. Okay. Before she is pronounced divorced the 3rd time, before performing major ritual ablution from the 3rd menstruation with kind companionship and intercourse, blah, 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 blah. If you know, again, when the husband and wife both know that she wants to ransom her divorce, in other words, she is buying her own freedom, the dowry. So then she says, listen, if you want to divorce me, you have to give me, because he's already paid the money. You want to divorce me and I need to give you back the money.
Yeah, presumably.
I don't understand.
Presumably that's it, right?
I don't understand. The rulings of Allah, okay, but now, fear that they may not be able to keep the limits, and then this is in the brackets, imposed by Allah. What are these limits?
Regulating the relationship between husband and wife. So presumably what it means is they're not going to be a good husband and wife, or they can't get on, and her way of going for a divorce is to say, hey, you can have the dowry back and I want a divorce.
But they still have sex.
Where do you get that bit?
Well, this is the rulings of Allah. These are the limits. Because if divorced, there are limits. If you are divorced, you're not allowed to have sex unless you're married. So you're no longer married, but you're living together. So you can't keep the limits because you're having sex. Remember, this is the old days where, the women had to cover themselves for fear of being raped. Now you have a man who has divorced his wife, but they're still living together. And so the limits of the relationship are that you are only allowed to have sex with somebody that you're married to, but you're no longer married. And now if you can't keep this, then she has to pay back the dowry or what? So if she pays him money so that she can have sex with him now or what?
No, maybe she pays him money and she has to leave. Maybe that's because there was something about releasing her, right? Do you remember?
Yeah, but if you know that they may not be able to keep the limits, so if they're going to carry on having sex, the rulings of Allah regulating the relationship between husband and wife, in that case, it is no sin for either of them if they pay each other, and especially the husband. If the woman ransoms for herself, if the husband takes what the woman ransoms herself with out of the generosity of her soul.
This woman ransomed her divorce from her husband.
I'm sorry, the tafsir makes it less clear. It confuses me even more.
These are the limits of Allah. The transgress them, do not step. I think you're right. Stop. So if they want to have sex, then she's got to give him back the dowry, right? But that goes against the position. Although maybe this is a special occasion because they were married. She hasn't moved out yet, and so if she gives back the dowry, then they can have sex, right?
Okay, let's see. This verse was revealed. This is an example now about Thabit bin Qais ibn Shammas, whose wife, Jamila, was the daughter of Abdullah ibn chief of the hypocrites. This woman ransomed her divorce from her husband by giving him back what he gave her as dowry. These are the limits of Allah. Okay. So the rulings of Allah regulating the relationship in husband and wife do not step beyond that which Allah has prohibited. So what does he prohibit?
Well, having sex outside of marriage, then, right?
Yeah, but then this is an example which doesn't say this. How can she ransom her divorce?
So why so religious is saying they're having sex after declaring 2 times means the divorce is void, but they can't have sex after 3 times of declaring void.
Well, this is in the next
divorce.
sentence. We haven't been there yet.
Oh, okay.
The next one is, I mean, the next one is sick. Anyway, divorces twice, retention. This is a recommendation. Created angels, purified. I said my heart wants to be your comrade. Now, come on, this is too long. Al-Jalalains, they're always good for something that's short and quick. The direct object taking the accusative ending out of this inclusive substitution for the government verse also read in the second person. If you fear they may not maintain God's bounds, neither of them would be at fault if she were to ransom herself of some money so that he should divorce her. Aha, he turns it around. Here it's that she wants to divorce him. So if she goes and says, I want to divorce, she has to go to the judge because a man can divorce the woman, but the woman cannot divorce the man. The woman has to go to court, to a Sharia court. And she then has to pay him to get her divorce. In other words, in this instance, there is no culpability either for the man should he take the dowry or for the woman should she offer it. So it's not about sex, it's about money.
But the thing is, though, in that, how would she have a bank balance of her own, or how would she have any financial sustenance that's her own and not her husband's in the first place? Because once she becomes his property, she has no, if you like, independence. So
the father has to keep this.
But she's got, so the father is in effect buying his daughter back.
Correct.
That's not what's said in the hadith, though, is it? It says that she's buying herself back. So she's getting the money from the father to buy herself back. But would the father be willing to do that? Because the father would be thinking...
That's a different story.
Sorry?
That's a different story.
But the thing is, if you go back into that society, then the father would not be willing to give up. What if he spent the money? What if the money's gone? He hasn't.
Well, then she has to stay married.
This is what I'm getting at. The whole situation it benefits the husband. He can say talaq, talaq, talaq. She's gone. She, though, has to have some kind of financial assistance or aid to buy herself out of the wedding. What is the price? Is that the price that she, the husband paid the father for the bride, or does it say that there? Like if it was say £5,000, but it's £5,000 of the dowry has to be paid back to the husband, or is it more, or is it less? Who agrees the price if there's no fixed fee there?
Well, the father does all this. Because also TDS is making a point. The woman, the woman's dowry is hers, sure, but it's not paid to her; it's paid to the father.
Yeah. So the thing is, if the father has spent the money, she's stuck in that situation then.
So he gets the laptop and 2 donkeys, and that's it.
But he also gets to say talaq, 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 so he can get rid of her. But unless she's got any financial, any access to any financial arrangement with her father, she certainly won't have any money of her own.
She's stiffed.
There's the point. That's the point I'm trying to make. So everything is in the benefit of the man, not the woman.
So if you're a smart father, you would keep the dowry just in case she wants to get divorced, right? And then you'd say, okay, I've got the dowry. You'd have to put it in a bank or keep it safe, and then just give it back, right? You wouldn't if you were a smart father, especially if you thought the husband was a bit of a douche, then you'd probably want to keep this, right?
Robs, look, if you thought the husband was a bit of a douche, unless you're a particularly unloving father, you will not let your daughter marry a douche.
Well, in those days, I think they would let them marry because, hey, it brings peace between tribes and some other reasons, right? So they might have had, ulterior motives.
Point taken there. But if he wouldn't have kept the money in case he has to buy his daughter back, I mean,
I'm saying if you were smart, you would do that, right?
Okay, but that's assuming he's smart. I mean, if
he's not compelled to.
Right, if they're Muslims, then that tells you the level of intellect that they've got as to how smart they're going to be. Second of all, let's assume he is a smart one and he keeps the money to get his daughter back. That's like a prenuptial, okay, in itself. Let's assume that he has the money. Would he be willing to spend that money to buy his daughter back, knowing, in all likelihood, that nobody would want her now she's not a virgin?
Well, again, I suppose if he's compassionate, he would. Does he want his wife, his daughter, to live in
I've come
unpleasantness?
from a background in this country. I've seen that is not the way that it goes. With the greatest respect to you guys, that is not the way that it goes. When women are divorced by their husbands, they are normally left. I have an auntie that has not been married since, and her divorce took place in 1979, 1980. From an unloving husband, and she's been single ever since because nobody wanted her. And she's quite a pretty woman as well, or was at the time. So I've seen with my own eyes family members and local community where a woman got a divorce from the husband, and as far as the community was concerned, she was damaged goods. She was normally what would happen she'd be used as a make-weight to marry somebody from Pakistan or somewhere to get them into the country.
Can I show you the?
Go on, Stops.
No, I wanted to change the topic because this is the height of hypocrisy. So just quickly, what did you want to say before we change to this one?
Oh, okay. So I think there's a Muslim fellow there, Nico, saying this verse is specifically for gold diggers, trying to hustle a husband. You want a divorce, he needs to give the money back. So that's his claim.
Now, Maududi has a different spin. This brief verse was meant to reform a serious social evil common in Arabia before the advent of Islam. A husband was allowed to pronounce divorce as often as he pleased. Whenever his relations were strained with his wife, he would pronounce a divorce and then reunite as and when it suited him. As there was no limit to this, it was repeated over and over again. Thus, the wife could neither have conjugal relations with him nor was free to marry anyone else. This verse in the Quran shuts this door of cruelty.
This is one of the examples of pre-Islam Arabia that there is no recorded history of. They have all this history. This is what Arabia was like before Muhammad. So where is the evidence of Arabia? Where is it written down? Where is the historians? Where are the records of pre-Islam Arabia that we can refer to so we can see the paradigm change? What we do see, though, however, is a different one based on the Islamic sources. Khadija proves every statement like that wrong.
That's why I say this is the height of hypocrisy, because they're trying to spin something positive into this, in my eyes, very cruel sentence. And this is what I can't understand. They just make this stuff up and say, well, this was so bad, and now after Islam, this is so much better. It's not better. It's not better. Okay, let's go. Should we go to the next sentence, which is really bad?
It's better than the fiction that they've created. That's what they're trying to say.
Now, everything is the wrong way around. Okay, so if I were to read this whole story, I would write or read it very differently. But here it goes now. If he has divorced her for a third time, then she is not lawful to him afterwards. Okay, so you could only divorce twice until, and now there's a back door here, she marries a husband other than him. And if that later husband divorces her or dies, there is no blame upon the woman and her former husband for returning to each other if they think they can keep within the limits of Allah. These are the limits of Allah which he makes clear to people who know. Now, what that means, let me read Yusuf Ali. If a husband divorces his wife a third time irrevocably, he cannot after that remarry her. So in other words, let's say they've divorced twice, and now they say, oh shit, no, this was wrong. I really want them back. I want her back. She wants him back. But he, because it's a man's world, he cannot remarry her unless she has had sex with another man. And He then divorces her. So she first has to go to another man, have sex with him. He then divorces her. Then she can go back to the first or second or whatever husband. And in that case, there is no blame on either of them if they reunite, provided they feel that they can keep the limits of ordained by Allah and so on.
Yeah. Do they have to have sex though? Does she have to have sex with him in order and then have a divorce, or could she just marry somebody and then immediately divorce him without having sex?
And this is where the tafsirs come in. After the third divorce, and the marriage must be consummated. Then, if the other husband divorced her, this was revealed about up to this is now in the tafsir where they clarify the marriage must be consummated. This was the whole point.
Yeah, but it's not in the Quran, right? So you need
it's
to go
not in the
Quran.
Quran. Yeah, but the sentence to marry someone means to have sex with them.
Right. Okay. Right. Okay.
And here, this in the tafsir, they say this very clearly. It must be consummated. So in other words, she has to go and have sex with somebody else. Well, depending on who you are. Bill Clinton says a blowjob is not sex. So, so it varies. It differs what people consider to be sex. And then this was revealed about Abd al-Rahman ibn al-Zubair, the first husband and the woman, with the new dowry and marriage contract. They know that they're able to observe the limits, the rulings of Allah regarding the relationship between husband and wife. So this actually happened. So this is like Muhammad wanting to have his own daughter-in-law. Then they go and have this positive spin that the son, who was an adopted son, then first divorced his wife so that then Muhammad could marry her. And this was then allowed in the Quran. And
so
Jalalain, they also say,
came from, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Jalalain say divorce until she marries another husband who has sexual intercourse with her. Also, the Jalalain say the same thing. You must have sexual intercourse with another man before you're allowed to go to the first one. I'm sorry. In my book, with my non-believer basis of morality, this is sick. I don't think. Yes, I've had girls where we've split, and it doesn't matter who split for what reason, and then you decide actually this was not enough reason to split, and you get back together. But I don't first go and tell her, listen, you first need to go and have sex with somebody else, then you can come back to me.
Yeah, but you can see why it happened, right? So if this is related to that incident with his son-in-law, right? Then that's how this sort of came about. And then he wants to spin it that this is the word of Allah, right? Whereas it's just something that sort of is to make it seem consistent because of something that he did. So that's the origin, is it, Stops?
It is.
Yeah. Because obviously just going to have sex with another man before you get back together again makes no sense, right? Yeah. It even doesn't make sense just because he did it, but now you know how this came into being, right?
And you notice how the woman is going to be perceived in all this. It's not he's going to have sex with another woman or get married to another woman, have sex with her and divorce her. It's how she's being treated. She's being treated like a carcass, like a piece of property, like you're buying goods from a second-hand shop or something. It's got to be pre-owned by somebody else first before you can have it back again. There aren't enough words here in my vocabulary to try and estimate what's going through my mind when I'm reading text like this. That this is actually coming from a God. Allegedly from a God. This is 1.7 billion human beings on this planet have no choice but to testify that this is a sound, solid, humane, fantastic practice, and we're in total agreement.
Yeah, 1.69999 billion of them have never read this, or if they have, they've just ignored it and carried on, right?
And this was written before time. This was written alongside, it's been for time immemorial in heaven, next to Allah. And I find I'm in disbelief when I read this. I don't know what the audience must be thinking when they listen to us discuss this and try and come to some logical sense. Even Muslims themselves, what on earth are is going through your mind?
Well, they're obviously not thinking critically, right? And this is the best evidence against their God existing, in my view, is this book. Just start to read this book. This falsifies your God, right? You don't even have to go any further, right? What's your evidence against it, Rob? Why don't you disbelieve the Quran. That's the reason I disbelieve.
But we are the ones who don't understand it, you see, because we don't have a Muslim on the show to explain this to us. This is the whole point.
Yeah, that's obviously done apologetics, right? That can
Yeah, but
find
how
some
can you explain this?
interpretation. Well,
How
exactly.
can you explain this? How can you make this look good? That you need to have somebody else have sex with your wife before you can take her back. How can you spin this to make this something positive? This is no.
Well, it won't be positive for us, right? Because we're using critical thinking. But to other Muslims who switch that off, somehow, inexplicably, it'll work for them.
I think the spin that they're going to put on this will show you how serious divorce is. They'll try and spin it that this will show you that before you should think before you act kind of thing. But even that's not a good enough spin when you consider it's the woman that has to go to another man, get married to another man, have sex with another man, have that man divorce her for the first husband to take her back. The first husband doesn't, in fact, himself belittle himself by going and getting married, then getting divorced, having sex, then getting divorced, and coming back to his wife. It's all about how that woman is treated, the wife is treated. It's belittling her. It's the measure of control that the man owes, and how must the woman feel in all of this? That this is what she's got to go through, and particularly if she's married to number one, he divorces her, goes back, divorces her, go back, divorces her again because he's got the power of divorce by saying talaq, talaq, talaq. She then, let's just say that she's got to go back to him because she's got children. She wants naturally, her natural inclination is to be with the father of her children. That'll be what any woman wants to do in that kind of situation. But she has to belittle herself in front of the community, in front of her own children, by going to another man, marrying another man, having sex with another man, and assuming that he will divorce her, unless there is an arrangement where you can borrow a husband for the night, where you marry a husband, you then go to a hotel room, he dips his wick, so to speak, and then as soon as he's dipped his wick and is ejaculated, he can say talaq, 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 you can go back to your husband now.
Yeah, it is sort of crazy, right? But I think the women in those days, and even Muslim women today, are brought up brainwashed into believing this is the way it is. This is the way God is. So in response to what you're saying about them feeling, they probably don't feel anything about this, right? And those that do will just be told, well, hey, you're not following Allah's will, so stop feeling that way and just get on with it, right?
I'm growing a beard at the moment, and I feel strangely drawn to Mecca. I might get a new job as a renter husband for the night. So if any Muslim wants to reinstate my Islamic standing, I'm willing for £100 a night. If you want your wife back, I'm offering my services for £100 a night. I'll have your wife, marry her, deal with her, and then divorce her. But you run the risk of, after she's tasted me, she might not want to go back to you.
Yeah, but you're also going in quite cheap, right? Remember, the Saudis have got plenty of money, right? Why not 10,000 a night or something, right?
Yeah.
Go exclusive. Otherwise you're not going to be able to cope with all the influx you might get, right?
Well, I was going in with the pound sterling and not the dollar, and I am 51.
Go on the high end. There's no reason not to, right? Anyway.
But in reality, in the real world today, we have very normal girls who want very normal things, who want to be romanced, who want to be swept off their feet, who want to hear compliments, who want to look nice, and just be loved just like anyone else. That's why Islam today does not fit in its current form into the 21st century, unfortunately.
Can I just say it stops? That is a wonderful point you've raised there, that when you look at the male-female relationship, you do not see that in the way that it's supposed to be. A man is supposed to be devoted to his husband and love his wife, and a woman is supposed to reciprocate that love with a deep respect for her husband.
But who are you to decree that?
But you don't have to be an atheist, a religious person to come up with that. I mean, there are books that I've read about the male and female relationship and how it's broken down today, and in the past how much it was so much better.
Yeah,
it's almost like a symbiotic relationship, and it's a trade-off. The man is supposed to take a measure of a lead in the relationship, but it's reciprocated at the emotional level and the level of respect that woman gives to the man. There is a trade-off between the two, and that's how relationships work, on that trade-off. But we do not see any romantic or respect or intellectual trade-off between a man and a woman in the Islamic religion. at all. It's not encouraged, it's not endorsed, it's not even mentioned. These standards or these limits that Allah has put there are solely beneficial for the man and the man alone.
And this is where we need to come up with this old center of this Euthyphro dilemma. But why so religious? Does make a good comment. What is the compliment to a Muslim wife? You stayed at home all day, right? So this is the compliment to the wife. In case somebody doesn't know it, Euthyphro's dilemma is where we have to decide whether something is good because a God decrees it, or does a God decree it because it is good. And those are the two things that we have to decide for ourselves. And this is one thing that I have decided for myself. No, there is nothing good because a God says so. Definitely not.
Simon James has just commented in on the side saying that he knows a man who referred to his wife as a spunk bucket. I think you're so right there. Spunk bucket or incubator, it's one or the other between them.
232, unbelievable. No, sorry, 231.
Yep, 231.
If you divorce women, once they fulfill their interim menstruations, you shall allow them to live in the same house amicably. Now, okay, let me go through this first. Or let them leave. Do not force them to stay against their will as a revenge. Anyone who does this wrongs his own soul. Do not take God's revelations in vain. Remember God's blessings upon you, and that he sent down to you the scripture and wisdom to enlighten you. You should observe God and know that God is aware of all things. Yeah. This is the benevolent version, okay? Let's take a look what the real Quran says. When you divorce your women and they have fulfilled their term, either retain them according to acceptable terms or release them according to acceptable terms. Do not keep them intending harm to transgress. And whoever does that has certainly wronged himself. And do not take the verses of Allah in jest. Remember the favor of Allah upon you, what has been revealed to you of the book and wisdom by which He instructed you, fear Allah, not Yusuf Ali. When you divorce women and they fulfill their term of their, this waiting period, either take them back on equitable terms. Equitable. Why can't I say equitable? Or set them free on equitable terms. But do not take them back to injure them, to take undue advantage. If anyone does that, he wrongs his own soul. Do not treat Allah's signs as a jest, but solemnly rehearse Allah's favors on you and the fact that He sent down to you the book and the wisdom for your instruction, and fear Allah, and you know that Allah is well acquainted with all things. So this is a repeat.
Mm. Yeah, and both of them say, hey, you can release her, or you can, what's the other term there? Set her free, set them free, as if, they're property or they're like a pet, right?
Yeah.
Well, you have a contract. It's a marriage contract. You've paid money for them.
Yeah, so it's almost like you have ownership, right?
Yeah. They are your tilth. We saw this last week.
Yeah. Yes, what else can you say? It's a bit of a repeat, and it just shows ownership.
232, if you divorce women, once they fulfill the interim, do not prevent them from remarrying their husbands if they reconcile amicably. This shall be heeded by those among you who believe in God the last day. This is purer for you, more righteous, God knows, while you do not. Okay, so this is another repeat. When you divorce women and they have fulfilled their term, do not prevent them from remarrying their former husbands if they agree among themselves on an acceptable basis. That is instructed to whoever of you believes in Allah the last day. That is better for you and the pure, and Allah knows and you do not. So when you divorce women, the Yusuf Ali version, and they fulfill their waiting period, do not, I don't know why it's idat. This is the plural. Ida is the waiting period. Their period. So they're waiting periods. So they fulfill their waiting periods. Do not prevent them from marrying their former husbands. If they mutually agree on equitable terms, this instruction is for all amongst you who believe in Allah the last day. That is making for most virtue, purity amongst you. Okay.
Yeah, so it's just an expanded version of a couple of verses ago, right? The verse before this was about releasing them. This one is about them remarrying again, right? After they've married somebody else and divorced that person.
What I don't understand is what is this mutual agreement? Why does that language have to be there? I mean, I've never known external to Islam, for instance, marriages that take place in like it's a business transaction, a mutual agreement. It doesn't sound like a loving arrangement. It doesn't sound like a relationship, which is what a marriage is supposed to be, a relationship.
Yeah, it's like legal terms, correct? Yeah.
It's like a business transaction.
Yeah.
That you do that. It's almost like, you know, rules and regulations and a criteria is set out like a contract is, and there is an obligation on both parties to fulfill that contract, not a relationship.
So if you buy a car and there's something wrong with it, you can give it back. But if not, then you can have an agreement. The one pays half, and then you can take the car back.
It's very much, and you can see this is almost like reciprocated in the way that Allah's relationships with the Muslim adherents. You know, it's an agreement. It's not a relationship. It's an agreement. It's a transaction. I do this.
Why does it have to be repeated so many times? Wasn't it clear the first time? If everything is so clear, there's no doubt, then why repeat it?
Because that's how propaganda works and brainwashing works. You repeat, you rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat.
Wow.
Yeah, obviously it wasn't clear enough, because you could have, as you say, made this clear in one verse or two verses, right? And it would have been crystal clear, right?
Yeah. Okay, this is a long one. Divorced mothers shall nurse their infants. Divorced mothers, not normal mothers. Divorced mothers shall nurse their infants for 2 full years, if the father so wishes. The father shall provide the mother's food and clothing equitably. No one shall be burdened beyond his ability. No mother shall be harmed on account of her infant, nor shall the father be harmed because of his infant. If his father dies, the inheritor shall assume these responsibilities. If the infant's parents mutually agree to part after due consultation, they commit no error by doing so. You commit no error by hiring nursing mothers, so as long as you pay them equitably. You shall observe God and know God is the seer of everything you do. Okay, this is also legal, but this is something that I would call benevolent. Let's quickly go through Sahih International. Mothers may breastfeed their children 2 complete years for whoever wishes to complete the nursing period. Upon the father is the mother's provision and their clothing according to what is acceptable. No person is charged with more than his capacity. No mother should be harmed through her child, and no father through his child. And upon the heir is, okay, I don't know how to leave out the brackets here. Upon the father's heir is a duty like that of the father. And if they both desire weaning through mutual consent from both of them in consultation, there is no blame upon either of them. And if you wish to have your children nursed by a substitute, there is no blame upon you, as long as you give payment according to what is acceptable. And fear Allah and know that Allah is seeing what you do. Exactly what Thunder has just said. I mean, there's also a business transaction. It's a legal transaction where they are taking care of the child. And this makes a lot of sense. And this is what is still being practiced today, that the child is being taken care of.
And when you look all like midway through the ayah, it says that no mother shall be treated unfairly on account of her children. So if she's not got children, she can be treated unfairly then.
I don't think that it can be inferred. I think it's if you do have children and you want to get rid of your wife, you can't do so because she needs to take care of the child. And I think this is quite okay. And I think this is reasonable to say, look, there's a child here. It's an infant and it needs suckling for another 2 years. Then the father is not allowed to chuck out the mother. But he has to provide for her until the 2 years are over. I think this is what this is saying. This is what
just read the use of Ali as well there for us. Just make that a bit higher.
Mothers shall give such to their offspring for 2 whole years if the father desires to complete the term. But he shall bear the cost of the food and clothing on equitable terms. No soul shall have a burden laid on it greater than it can bear. No mother shall be treated unfairly on account of a child, nor father on account of his child. An heir shall be chargeable in the same way. If they both decide on weaning by mutual consent and after due consultation, there is no blame on them. If you decide on a foster mother for your offspring, there is no blame on you, provided you pay what you offered on equitable terms. Fear Allah, know what Allah sees well what you do.
But also, if you look there, the mother shall give their offspring for 2 years if the father desires to complete the term. So if she decides not to give such their offspring for 2 years, if she decides not to, well, she can't make that choice if he desires to complete the term, right? So again, it seems like he's got the final say there.
Yeah, but it says you can't be treated unfairly. So this is a contradiction within itself, I think.
Okay, right.
So this, if the father desires to complete the term, is actually something that is useless. This should be deleted.
Yeah, but it depends on, you know, what lens you're looking at as to what's fair and unfair. I mean, you're looking at it from your background, and you can infer what is and what isn't fair, because in certain situations, what is fair and unfair could be subjective, but Islam is supposed to be objective. So what is the objective fairness and unfairness? We do not know what the criteria of fair and unfair is.
Actually, you're right. Yes.
In the 6th century, you see, as this verse is being revealed, we've already seen thus far that everything sides on the side of the male or the father, not on the side of the woman or the mother. So what you and I may consider be fair, and this ayah might look fair, but in reality is we do not know what the criteria of fairness is in the first place. Once we've established that, then we can objectively see what is fair and what isn't fair.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. So it's a you can't, if the father desires or doesn't desire,
Yes,
decides what is going to happen. Whether this is fair or not is a different story. Yeah.
but which is where I go back to my point. No mother shall be treated unfairly on account of her child. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
If she's got a child, she can't be treated unfairly. That is just John logic. But if she doesn't have a child, the implication is she can be treated unfairly. Otherwise, otherwise this point in the ayah has no relevance about what is and what isn't fair as far as a woman with or without a child is concerned.
And while we are here, there's an apologist, Nadir Ahmed, who gives you $1,000 if you debate him. He came on the Jinn&Tonic show, and he said, "This is a miracle, because the Quran couldn't know that the World Health Organization says that you shall breastfeed kids for 2 years. So the Quran knew over 1,000 years earlier than science what was actually the norm and what was the best for the children."
Nadir Ahmed, with the greatest respect to listeners out there, is a dickhead. Watching a Nadir Ahmed debate, it is more humane to watch baby seals get clubbed. That is more. And at every debate I've seen him, I have nearly reported the Christian and atheist to cruelty to animals for the.
But do you know what his source was for his claim? CNN. This was such a joke.
If he's offering $1,000 for a debate, take the money and run. I'll offer myself, please. I'll even do it live with my face showing.
Because nobody will talk to him because he's such an idiot.
Money and run.
But I mean, even that sort of thing, he's seen the 2 years, right? And has obviously ignored the fact that it's if the father desires. It's not like if Allah says, "Thou shalt do this because it's best for your child," then at least you might have some sort of a point. I mean, it still wouldn't be a strong one, but it would be stronger than you've seen the words 2 years, but ignored the fact that this is if the father decides or desires for it, right? So this is entirely up to the father, and at no point does it say that the father has any idea on what's best for the child, because the father could say, well, it's not best for the child, right? So even, you know, just reading this verse, you can't infer that whatsoever, right?
Makes
There's no
it
way
totally
it's a miracle.
subjective, yeah. And the point is, the WHO doesn't even say this. This is the problem. Because while he was on the show, I quickly went to the WHO and I looked up what they said, and they didn't even say that. And then I said, look, this is what they actually say. Yeah, but my source says that it doesn't. Then I said, well, what is your source? And he said, well, CNN. And we just laughed away.
Yeah.
But you get people like that, you know. Okay, next.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, again, Rashid.
Just make it a bit higher on screen, because obviously we can't see what you're reading. So there we go. Thanks.
Those who die and leave wives, their widows shall wait 4 months and 10 days. So this is now contradicting what we saw with the divorce. So if you die, then you need to wait 4 months, not 3 months. Once they fulfill the interim, you commit no error by letting them do whatever righteous matters they wish to do. God is fully cognizant of everything you do. So Sahih International says about this, those who are taken in death among you and leave wives behind, they shall wait 4 months and 10 days. And when they have fulfilled their term, then there is no blame upon you upon them it should be, for what they do with themselves in an acceptable manner. And only Allah is fully acquainted with what you do.
How can... Sorry.
Yusuf Ali says, if any of you die and leave widows behind, they shall wait concerning themselves for 4 months and 10. When they have fulfilled the term, there is no blame on you. I don't know if they dispose of themselves in a just and reasonable manner, and Allah is well acquainted with what you do.
How can there be any blame on him in the first place if the guy's dead and he's been dead for 4 months and 10 days? How can there be any blame on him? In what way could blame be accounted to the dead man who's been dead for a quarter of a year? No, it's not. It's a third of a year. Sorry, I was into Islamic numerology there and inheritance. But if he's been dead like for 4 months, how can there be any portion of blame to him? And then it says, if they dispose of themselves in a just and reasonable manner. Yet again, that sounds all nice when it uses that terminology, just and reasonable manner. But which lens are we looking at it when we're using those words? Are we looking at it in Islamic parlance? Because in Islamic parlance, a woman can't dispose of herself in a just and reasonable manner, can she?
Well, she has to remarry.
Yes, and that's at the behest and terms set out by the man.
Yeah. Yeah, but a different man.
But a different man, yes.
So if they decide, okay, well, they can't decide. They have to, because a woman gets her identity in Islam through marriage, okay? She doesn't have an identity. So she has to remarry. So she can't decide. She just needs to decide where she says yes. So if somebody comes to her and says, look, you've been married, I don't know, the guy died, you're not a virgin, but I will take you in, I will pay for you, then that's okay. And then she says yes, and this is acceptable after 4 months and 10.
But it says that, look, and this is yet again where the language of Allah is not clear, because it says right from the start of 2, 3, 4, if any of you die. What do you mean if? What, were they going to carry on living forever? Shouldn't it be so when those of you die, not if you die?
No, it should just say widows have to wait 4 months before they go and marry again. Finished.
But even if you have to put the point down about the male dying, it should be when those of you die, not if. Because the if is always like, well, some of you might
Should
not.
you die by chance?
Should you die, yeah. And this is a book supposed to be made clear.
Okay, this is okay. Let's stay on topic. Brilliant. You commit no error by divorce. And again, I'm reading the Rashid Khalifa first because I'm so in love with this. You commit no error by divorcing the women before touching them or before settling the dowry for them. In this case, you shall compensate them, the rich as he can afford and the poor as he can afford, an equitable compensation. This is a duty upon the righteous. Sorry, Thunderous, it's just continuing on along those lines. It's like buying a car, really. Sahih International, there is no blame upon you for that which you allude concerning a proposal to women or what you conceal within yourselves. Allah knows that you will have them in mind, but do not promise them secretly except for saying a proper saying. Okay. Do not determine to undertake a marriage contract until the decreed period reaches its end, and know that Allah knows what is within yourself, so beware, and know that Allah is forgiving and forbearing. I did not understand anything I've just read. Yusuf Ali, there's no blame on you if you make an offer of betrothal or hold it in your hearts. Allah knows that you cherish them in your hearts, but do not make a secret contract with them except in terms honorable, nor resolve on the tie of marriage till the term prescribed is fulfilled. And know that Allah knows what's in your heart and take heed of.
Yeah, so obviously,
maybe it's just about sex
what it seems to be saying is if you fancy somebody and you want to marry them, you've got to wait for the term to complete, right?
Yeah, but what term? We haven't heard of a term before you're allowed to marry someone.
Well, that 4 months and 10 days, right?
Yeah, but that's only if they're getting, if they are widows.
Oh, okay. But also then, so it's either 4 months and 10 days if they're a widow, but it's 3 months if they've been divorced from their husband, right?
Yeah, but here it's a proposal to women.
Yes, but you've got to wait that time before you can openly make it. So what it seems to be saying is, hey, if you've got it in your heart that you cherish them, you've got to do the proposal after waiting the prescribed time, either 4 months and 10 days or 3 months, depending on the woman.
But the Quran has not revealed that to us yet.
But if you look as well, if you look at verse 34, it talks about widows, not widow, widows. So it's in the plural. When a man dies, he's leaving women behind, right? Not one, but two, three, or four, or more. But when you go to 35, it talks about Allah knows that you cherish them. It's not about you cherish her in the singular. It's cherish them in the plural.
No, it's an object. Yeah.
Yeah, as you know, Allah is like is the best used car salesman that's ever been around. But he's also like the dodgy MOT mechanic on the back street somewhere. You know, he's got that dual role. One minute he's a used car salesman, next minute he's a dodgy MOT place. You know, you roll your car up for an MOT. Oh, I don't like the look of that. You know, I can hear the rattle in the engine, and you know, he's such a dodgy character, isn't he? I mean, the way he uses language here is disgraceful. Widows, women, yet again reduced to nothing more than pets and objects. And yet again, if your hearts cherish them, you know, them in the plural, you know, they're just objects to the male. That, you know, they're nothing more, you know, than a pet or an incubator, or as the gentleman in the comment section earlier on, you know, like a sperm bucket.
Spunk bucket.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a problem with swapping between plural and singular. It just sort of happens randomly at different times, right?
Yeah, but to address your point, I think what it says here, what it should be saying here, until the decreed period reaches its end, if there was one. Because I think here it's talking about all women in general, where there is no decreed period. There's only a decreed period if they are divorced or if you die. So if there is a question of whether you are pregnant or not. Otherwise, this does not apply. So the decreed period only if applicable. And this is missing here.
Yeah. Well, presumably, again, maybe it's inferred, right? Because the preceding verses talk about the two circumstances where you've got to wait. And so it's inferred that, hey, if you understood the preceding verses, then this verse would refer to those. But I agree with you. It could have said that, refer to previous verses if you are unsure, right?
Yeah, because it's insinuated but never vocalized. It's not really there.
Yeah.
Okay, and the funny thing is, of course, that it's always women and not your beloved one, the one and only. No, it's just women. Okay, then we go to 236. You commit. Oh no, we've just done this. Oh no, this is different.
No, you haven't.
This is different. Not a lot, but because it says it's the same thing. You commit no sin in the beginning. You commit no error by divorcing the women before touching them or before settling the dowry for them. In this case, you shall compensate them. The rich, I just read this. So I read the wrong sentence from Rashid Khalifa. There is no blame upon you if you divorce women you have not touched, nor specified for them an obligation, but give them compensation, the wealthy according to his capability and the poor according to his capability, a provision according to what is acceptable, the duty upon the doers of good. And Yusuf Ali says, there's no blame on you if you divorce women before consummation or the fixation of the dower. But bestow on them, the wealthy according to his means and the poor according to his means. A gift of a reasonable amount is due from those who wish to do the right thing.
Yeah, but surely you can't divorce somebody unless you've consummated, because you said earlier consummation is part of a marriage. So if you haven't consummated, then you aren't married.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
And particularly if it's a woman that wants to go back to her first husband, she has to marry him and have sex with him, otherwise she can't get divorced to go back to the first husband.
No. It's the marriage contract that you do or you make or you draw up with the father.
Oh, okay, right. But that's not a complete marriage then, right? That's not the full marriage. That's just the contract prior.
Yes.
But then why would you need to divorce her? Because divorce would require you to actually have got married, right? Because if you write up the contract, that's like a prenup type thing, right? Which means you aren't yet married.
Does it actually say divorce? There is no blame upon you if you talak. No, it is divorce, yeah. I don't know.
That
This
seems to be a
I don't know
contradiction.
why.
Yeah, that seems to be an error in the Quran to my initial reading, right? Because a divorce would require that you are properly married, and even if you accepted that what the verse is talking about is the marriage contract, that doesn't mean that you are married, right?
Where you have offered marriage, but then even if you just offer marriage, there's no point in divorcing. Anyway, what it does, it tells the people that if you change your mind, in other words, you go to the father and you say, okay, listen, I'll give you X amount and blah, blah, blah. Then I'm going to marry your daughter. And he says, okay, cool, give me the stuff. And then the next day you think about this and you say, nah, actually not, I'm not going to. Then you have to go to the father and say, no, I'm retracting my offer. And you're allowed to do that if you have not touched her or specified any kind of obligation. But you need to give them a present. And the present is everyone according to their capabilities.
Which is kind of like, social, sort of class distinction.
Well, it's a penalty payment, and this is actually good, okay, because you can't specify an amount if you are rich where it doesn't hurt, and for the poor which he can never afford. So what you're saying is everybody by according to their means, and it's just a small penalty payment because you have gone back on a contract.
Sorry,
Yeah.
my fault. I was reading it back to front. So I was reading it. Sorry.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It seems that that's problematic, the verse as it stands there.
37, if you divorce them before touching them, but after you had set the dowry for them. This is another case, okay? Before it was before touching and before paying, but here it's before touching, but after you paid for them, the compensation shall be half the dowry unless they voluntarily forfeit the rights or the party responsible for causing the divorce choose to forfeit the dowry. To forfeit is closer to righteousness. You shall maintain the amicable relationships among you. God is seer of everything you do. Okay, that makes sense. Sahih International says, and if you divorce them before you touch them, and you have already specified for them an obligation, then give half of what you specified. So the obligation is the dowry. Unless they forego the right, or in one in whose hand is the marriage contract, foregoes it. You see, this marriage contract.
Mm-hmm.
And to forego it is nearer to righteousness. And do not forget graciousness between you. Indeed, Allah is whatever seeing. Yusuf Ali says about this, and if you divorce them before consummation, but after the fixation of a dowry, then for them is the half of this dower, unless they remit it, or is remitted by him in whose hands is the marriage tie. And the remission of is the nearest to righteousness. And do not forget liberality between yourselves, for Allah sees what you do.
So the remission, who's doing the remission? Who's doing the remission here? Because the nearest to righteousness. So they're saying the remission is the nearest, but whose? Because it says of the man's half, right? So is it the man that's saying, I will pay you half? Is it the woman saying, hey, I won't accept your payment? What exactly is the remission here?
Well, it says the right or the one in whose hand is the marriage contract.
Which is the man, right?
Which is the father of the bride or the bride itself.
Mm-hmm. So if they give the money back, if they say, hey, do you know what? It's closer to righteousness. We'll give you back the half of the dowry that you paid.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Gotcha.
That's how I read this.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
No, I was thinking, yeah, as you're saying, half of the money's paid back.
And Abdul Najid, no, this is not the first time. I did this a couple of years ago, where I went through the Quran sentence by sentence, bit by bit, word for word. It was unfortunately shut down by Muslims who didn't like my interpretation or my way of doing it. So they shut down the entire channel. And this is why Imam father, Imam brother, Imam sister, they're gone. Imam mother is gone. Sister and son are still there, but the others are gone. Because they didn't like me reading the Quran, because I was an atheist reading the Quran, and they did not agree with what I did. Okay, shall we take a break here? Because now there's a break in contents.
Perfect
so
time.
There's going to be something completely different. So I think it's a good time to call it a night.
Breaking song, you mean? because it is a poetic song being sung.
Break in song. Okay. All right, then let me stop. Oh, how did I stop?
You've got up some crazy comment there. There you go.
Yeah, but how did I stop presenting now?
Don't know. You must have clicked something.
Nope. Oh, okay. All right. Perfect timing. Okay. The only thing, any comments or something, then Jinn&Tonic Discord server. There's the link. If you want to discuss anything else on Islam, you're welcome to join us. The Discord server is a very, very easy thing. Anybody can join. Anybody can go there. You've got the invite. What you do normally, what is the best thing? You install Discord, but you can also use the browser version.
Yeah,
That's
and I've simplified it as well, Stops, based on your thing. So if somebody goes in there at the moment, there's something that says text, and there's something that says voice. And under voice, we've got general voice, after show voice. Myself and Rational Review are already in there. We are muted and deafened at the moment. So if you're looking, you'll see Rational Review and Rob Speaker's Corner. And if you want to type something, then under text, general chat is where you can type. So we've simplified it, taken out some of the other channels because you said it was a bit confusing. Right?
Yeah. So in other words, you are being the typical atheist, deaf and muted and dumb and.
So we're inviting Muslims in there. If Kenny Bomer is still here and wants to come in there and educate us on the Discord server, I'm sure we'll have an interesting discussion, right? But again, if you're a Muslim and you didn't feel comfortable coming on the live show, then Discord is not recorded. It's available. The Thunderous has joined us, so there's 3 of us in there at the moment. If you join the link that Dave put in here, that'll take you straight to the Discord server.
What remains is the hadith. I didn't find a positive one, but I found a normal one. It's in book 4 and it's number 184 of Sahih Bukhari. It's narrated by Asma bint Abu Bakr. I came to Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, during a solar eclipse. The people were standing and offering the prayer, and she was also praying. I asked her, what is wrong with the people? She beckoned with a hand towards the sky and said, Subhanallah. I asked her, is there a sign? She pointed out, yes. So I too stood for the prayer till I fell unconscious. And later I poured water on my head. And after the prayer, Allah's apostle praised and glorified Allah and said, just now I have seen something which I never saw before at this place of mine, including paradise and hell.
There we go. Another sort of incomprehensible response.
And this is sheer ignorance, not knowing what an eclipse is. And one thing I need to explain, a lot of people don't know this, but people in those days, I should say the other way, there were people in those days who got out drums and all sorts of instruments or sticks to make a lot of noise when an eclipse of the sun occurred. And then when the sun came back, they said, you see, if I hadn't beaten the drums, the sun wouldn't have come back. And this is how these rituals manifested themselves within the culture, because the people were too afraid not to beat those drums because they thought the sun was never going to come back. And they thought that they were responsible with their beating the drums. And that's how this happens. Ancient superstitions. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Robin Thunderous. Thank you very much for helping out on this. And I don't know, it's actually a lot of fun going through the Quran, but it's really so difficult to maintain a straight face and to really get the energy up to do this every week, to go through this stuff, which is to a large extent nonsensical. And you really want to ask Muslims, why do you believe this? Why do you make the claim that there's anything special about the Quran when there's so obviously absolutely nothing?
And most of them haven't read it, is the answer. And they wouldn't be able to make sense of it if they did, right? Or they'll make up stuff like Kenny or Benny or any of the other Muslims that have been on here, right? So there we go.
Okay, guys, if anybody has any other interpretation, you're welcome. See you next week, and give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whatever you want. Some two. I suppose one of them is Kenya, don't you think? Then show us that you are interacting with us. It doesn't matter whether it's positive or negative, and we'll see you next week on Friday. Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Bye.